So that's the great thing. Sports brings people together, right? And, when you think about everything going on in our country right now, like youth sports might be one of the last things that can bring people together because it's all around that fun. It's around competition. It's around people coming together from different backgrounds and participating in the sport. But we need to make sure that we're still providing that right environment for kids to thrive and making sure that they feel welcome.
Welcome to Sponsorable, a podcast that brings together sports organizers and brand leaders to talk about the business of grassroots sports. I'm Garrett Shea, and I've spent the last 20 years in the youth sports industry, where I built nationally televised sporting events, as well as national corporate sponsorship programs. I created this podcast to bring in experts from the youth sports industry and have them share what they do in the space and how they do it. My guest today is going to answer the question as to how we get more kids into sport and how national brands are activating with his organization, Positive Coaching Alliance. Please welcome CEO of Positive Coaching Alliance, Jason Sachs. All right, Jason. Well, hey, it's great to have you on Sponsorable. Certainly really looking forward to talking all things Positive Coaching Alliance with you, from some of your great sponsors and partners to your mission, to other aspects of the business. So certainly welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. Excited for this conversation.
Yeah. So, first thing I do when we bring on a new guest is I kind of check out your website, your partners. Obviously, as Sponsorable, we are in the talking the business of grassroots sports, and clearly, Positive Coaching Alliance is more. It's as a nonprofit, and you got a great mission, and certainly want to get into the mission. But first things first, let's talk about your sponsors. You have some great sponsors that are certainly supporting that cause and mission, but maybe talk about a couple of them and what they do with Positive Coaching Alliance.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been fun, I'd say, especially the last couple years. I feel like we found a sweet spot with some really great sports brands in the space that we've started to partner with. So most recently, hopefully many people that are listening or watching have seen on ESPN the Take Back Sports initiative, which is all around how do we take back sports to what it should really be for youth sports and for kids. And that's all around making sure that we are focusing on kids playing multiple sports, focusing on, those local rec and park programs and making sure that kids have access to places to play at a young age. We want to make sure that all coaches are trained in positive youth development because that's where we know how kids thrive. And we want to make sure we're keeping the fun in sports, right? That's what sports should be. It should be about fun and joy. And so PCA's partnership with ESPN to really bring back this Take Back Sports initiative to life. They've brought a lot of great, obviously, their media platform. They've also brought a lot of great athlete ambassadors to the program. So if you're watching different sports programming on ESPN platforms, you'll see the likes of Eli and Peyton Manning and Stephen Curry. There's fun little tongue-in-cheek PSAs that are playing. We have Asia Wilson, Natasha Cloud, like a lot of great participants. We just finished up with the U.S. Open, and we had Francis Tiafoe and Ben Shelton that did little vignettes about the importance of either playing multiple sports or how sports can bring community together. So we're super excited that we have this initiative with ESPN, and that all drives back to takebacksports.org, which is a landing page that has a lot of different resources for parents and youth sports parents on what their role should be and how they should navigate the youth sports landscape.
So obviously, like ESPN, I mean, most people know of ESPN by, watching them on television, but clearly there's the business side of it. And ESPN is always about how are we injecting positivity into sport? Quite frankly, how are they being a positive community developer of sport and giving back to it? So maybe talk us through a little bit about, how does that deal come to fruition? Who are you working with at, and you don't have to give specific persons, but like develop or what department at ESPN are you working with on that program?
Yeah, it's a great question. Obviously, ESPN is part of the Disney company, so there's a lot of different, a lot of different divisions and arms and uh, different ways that PCA can fit into some of the things they're doing. But I'd say over the last 4 years or so, we've been working very closely with their corporate citizenship department. And for the last few years, they funded a lot of PCA programming that was focused on training coaches and bringing more access to sports in underserved communities. So we've had a great partnership with them over the last few years on that front. And it just so happened last fall, we were on a call with them talking about some of the work that we were already doing. And they said, "Hey, have we showed you what we're going to be working on for 2025?" And they said, "We want to focus on youth sports parents." And like my jaw dropped because we had, 2 months prior, had presented to our board at PCA a whole parent campaign and initiative. And one of the goals that we were like, we need to go out and find a media partner or somebody that can help amplify this. And so we were on that call. We pulled up the deck and said, "This is what we were thinking about how we're going to talk to parents and this campaign." And ESPN, we had the opportunity to sit down and plan it out and said, "Well, let's not recreate the wheel. Both of us are heading in this direction. How can we come together? We already know each other pretty well. So let's come together and figure out how we can make this partnership and this campaign as meaningful as possible and also as tangible as possible. So how can we get the right resources into the hands of parents when they need them going to youth sports, sporting events, practices, and how they're interacting with their child and youth sports organizations throughout the year?"
Yeah, that's outstanding. And I think a lot of maybe organizations, national, regional organizations, probably aren't as aware about the dollars out there with some of these big corporations. To your point, ESPN is part of Disney. Their corporate citizenship department does great work. They can leverage ESPN's media assets, but they also have access to grant dollars that they can provide to organizations. And probably ESPN is looking for more large scale organizations like yourselves, but there's other entities out there that do have state and local dollars through grants that folks can apply for. And to your point, it's like it's not let's not create a new project or program. Let's show them, hey, this is something we're doing and we're gonna do, but we really need the funding and some of your strategic assets to really make it that much bigger and better.
Yeah, what you just said there is perfect because I think that's the key to making a meaningful partnership. And if you look at some of our other partners across the space, we have a great partnership with Under Armour and Curry Brand, and we've been working with them for maybe 5+ years. We just renewed our partnership there, so we're going to continue our work there, which we're super excited about. But that all started with a locally based partnership, right? You have Under Armour, roots in Baltimore. They want to impact what's happening in Baltimore, and Baltimore City Public Schools was looking to work with a coach training provider. They brought PCA in. You have the Baltimore Ravens there involved. You have Under Armour involved, and you triangulate that partnership, and everybody's moving in the same direction. And it's like, hey, what role are we going to play in this partnership, right? And we all have our roles to play, and we all come to the table and make sure that we're aligned and going in the same direction. And then when you throw in right after that happened, early in that partnership is when Under Armour launched the Curry brand, and that was really Stephen Curry, his brand. When he launched it, he wanted to make sure that he was also focusing, and there was going to be a clear focus on community impact and not only providing places for kids to play, but also opportunities to make sure they're getting a great experience. So that's why they wanted to focus on coach training. So we've taken a lot of our work with Curry Brand and Under Armour to Oakland because that is Stefan's adopted home, and they want to do a lot of work there. That's where his foundation does a lot of work. But then we've been able to scale Curry Brand coach training funding that they've given to PCA all across the country. And over the last 3 or 4 years, we've trained over 15,000 coaches just with the funding from Curry Brand. And it's great if you're a coach and you're going to one of those workshops. The workshop kicks off with a 1.5-minute video of Stefan talking about the impact of a coach and what they can do for a young child, talk about the importance of training coaches and why Curry Brand and Under Armour has partnered with PCA. So it's great alignment there, very similar. We have a partnership with Gatorade, and that's been something where if you look at how does Gatorade want to show up in the youth sports space, and they want to make sure kids have more access to youth sports. They want to get more women and girls playing sports and coaching sports, and they saw PCA as an opportunity to scale a lot of that work.
As you talk about ESPN, their target focus was parents. Under Armour was coach or training the coaches and really impacting more coaches. And then Gatorade is more impacting the girl side of the game. So you've done a great job. One, aligning with some tremendous brands. Two, identifying one of the key factors that's important for them, and then marrying up programs that you have and are already in place that then are gonna get them excited and bring them to the table and bring dollars plus branding and other strategic assets.
Yeah, and I think that's there's a little bit of a matchmaking there, right? You want to make sure that both from a nonprofit standpoint, right? We have limited funds and resources. So we want to make sure that if we're partnering with somebody, they're funding a lot of the work that we're already doing or the work we want to do. We don't want to go and create a brand new program just to, you know, appease the needs of a sponsor, because that's going to take us away from maybe what we're focused on. And so I think the great relationships that we've had with some of the sponsors and partners that we just talked about is that it is a true collaborative effort on, here's what we want to try to accomplish, here's what they want to try to accomplish, where is their common ground. And I think as you've looked over the last couple years, there's been a big focus on people getting to more kids having access to sports, and they see the barriers that might face kids in underserved communities. So they're like, how can we remove those barriers and get more kids playing? And I think there's been obviously a huge focus, which is amazing to see, not only at the professional and college level around women's sports, but also we need to make sure that young girls have the opportunity to play. That they have coaches that look like them, where they feel safe, seen, and heard when they show up to practice. That somebody looks like them, and so all these organizations are coming in and saying, hey, this is where we need to invest. And PCA has the scale, they have the content, they have the programming that's going to allow us and our dollars to go a really long way and have great impact.
Yeah. So let's talk about developing that access to sport program, because I think that's something that corporate America is, I think, really focused on. To your point, something that a lot of large brands that I talk with really want to figure out, kind of, how do I develop a program that that makes sense and actually will make a difference. You just look at the registration fees. And even if you take some of the smaller or the smaller reg fees, like even at $150, right? You want to impact 1,000 kids. Well, that's $150,000. And then you're also talking about, hey, 1,000 kids across the country. Like, at some point, that the math certainly adds up pretty quickly, as well as the logistics of, all right, what am I writing, mom and dad a check, 1,000 different families a check, like, and so it's a great concept. It's actually a pretty challenging, program to put together. So maybe talk us through your access to sport program.
Yeah, it's something that's so important because kids in underserved communities participate at half the rate of their more affluent peers. They start later and they drop out earlier. So we know that we're missing a lot of great opportunities. And um, what we really take a look at is when we go to a local community, we want to be on the ground working alongside of who are the key stakeholders and the key players in those local markets. So we're looking at park and rec program, local schools, local community organizations, after school programs. Where are the kids showing up when they're not at home? And we want to make sure that we are aligned with those community members. And the first thing we do is take a look at what are the barriers in that community that's happening, right? So why is a child, I'm going to use an example in Oakland. Why is a child in Oakland? Why is their youth sports experience different than, somebody that might be in Palo Alto, right? There's a lot of, obviously there's different resources. There are different systemic barriers that exist in certain communities that we want to try to knock down. So what we've done in Oakland is we've launched a local sports equity and access coalition over the last few years, where those key stakeholders. We did a little landscape analysis of what are the challenges that kids are facing here. One of the things that boiled to the top was kids in Oakland didn't have the opportunity to play sports for free until they got to middle school. So there were local programs that were more pay to play, but kids really couldn't access a free program until they got to middle school. Well, kids aren't always going to just go out and try something new when they get to middle school, right? So that we were seeing that was a barrier. Kids couldn't get access. So through that local coalition, through some funding that the school district had and that others were able to bring to the table, we helped facilitate a elementary sports league at Oakland Unified School District, which helped create 3,000 new youth sports opportunities for kids each year. And that means that they're trying new sports. They're getting that pipeline to the sports experience is starting earlier for them. And then we're going and training all the coaches to make sure that they're having a good experience. And we did an impact study after the first year of that. And one of my favorite things is we heard from parents, and parents said, because of this sports program, we feel closer to the community and we feel closer to the school community because of this sport program. So that's the great thing. Sports brings people together, right? And, when you think about everything going on in our country right now, like youth sports might be one of the last things that can bring people together because it's all around that fun, it's around competition, it's around people coming together from different backgrounds and participating in the sport. But we need to make sure that we're still providing that right environment for kids to thrive and making sure that they feel welcome. So that's one example of how we look at how are we creating more access for kids to youth sports.
And what a great example. So, as I kind of think through that, right? And I'm sure there were a number of challenges that you had to face, like just going and getting the school district to buy into it. I'm sure was a challenge.
For sure. And you have school districts, you have park and rec that are, they could be working side by side, but they're not working together on some things, right? And each city that we go to, and we have these coalitions in a number of cities, we use the same type of framework, but there are going to be different challenges in different markets, right? And so we want to figure out what might be, a challenge in San Diego is going to be different than what's in Oakland. But our goal is it's all about the right people, and then how we go about that, making sure that we're getting to the root of the problem and making sure that we're working alongside those community members and feeling like we are part of that solution and helping them get to where we go. And we use those best practices from other cities to show them that here are some outcomes that we could get.
In your Oakland example, did the school district take on the athletic kind of the league operations, so coordinating all the different games and practice and staffing and recruiting coaches, and then I get that you guys are going to train those coaches, which is great. But did they take on a really kind of big operational role?
I will say yes, and it's been a great community effort in the fact that, we not only help train coaches, we also help recruit coaches, but we've also brought in a lot of the like local sport providers. So programs like America Scores or other, Oakland Lacrosse, they were then helping provide some resources and access to those sports. So as kids were trying new sports, they were going to those local organizations that were already running the sports and bringing them into that environment as well. And, we talked about Stefan and Aisha Curry earlier. Their foundation, Eat, Learn, Play, really focuses on Oakland, and they've invested in creating safe places for kids to play. So they've been, revitalizing courts and fields. And so that has, again, I talked about like almost that triangulation of partners, right? They're helping provide field space and creating new spaces for kids to play. We're helping with the programming. We're making sure that the experience is a good one for kids. So it really does take a village for this to happen, right? Like it's great if you have the buy-in of one or two people, but it's not going to happen unless you have everybody around the table aligned.
Sure. And do you have did you have to come up with some sort of at least a budget, like even if it was more of a kind of placeholder? And I ask that more because as you start to think about, okay, great in Oakland, how do I scale this? How much money am I going to need to raise in order to do it? Because I assume that the school district probably isn't providing any funding.
Yeah, there's different funding. There's different state funding that has been available to schools, and obviously coming out of the pandemic, there was a lot of different funding. There's also like out of school time funding that they can tap into. So those were some of the different areas where we were able to pull funding for. But we also need other local, contributors and things like that to be able to bring local companies, local individuals, local foundations to bring money to the table. And yeah, so we have a budget, and our goal is really to like, how do we invest in something over 3 or 4 years, because we know it's a process. We need to do a landscape analysis, and we need to make sure that we have the right people around the table. We need to figure out what the barriers are, and then figure out what those solutions are. So this isn't necessarily something that's going to happen overnight, and we need to be able to invest in that time so that they know we're going to be here for the next couple of years. We're going to be alongside of you, and this isn't going to just be something that we're dropping in. We want to be a part of that community.
That's great. No, that's very interesting. And as you look to grow it, are you currently, do you have other cities that you're targeting or and building towards?
Yeah, so we have coalitions in Oakland, in San Diego, San Francisco. We're doing some work in Buffalo. Then we're doing some initial work in the likes of Boston and Seattle. We're looking at Atlanta a little bit. So we have a great partnership and some funding with the Arthur Blank Foundation that has really started to lean into youth sports as well. And so we're working with a school district outside of Atlanta with the Blank Foundation right now, but we think there's an opportunity to be able to do more work. And there's other organizations that are really focused on this coalition model as well, which is, it's great to work alongside of them, because there's great work happening in Chicago and in other cities around the country. So what we want to make sure that we're not necessarily causing double the work. So if somebody's already doing great work in a city, it's like, great, how can we support? How can we complement? But we also want to get to other cities. We want to get to new cities where there is a need, because if you look across the country, there's so many communities that need more access to sports, and we talk about all the great things that can come from a positive youth sports experience. But if the child can't even access it, then we're in trouble.
And as you start to take on a new city or look towards a new city, are you analyzing, right? Is there truly a need at that? Yeah, the elementary school level. I think that's a very interesting angle because there's not a whole lot of elementary school sports in the world.
It's really more so that filled the void of like a local community sports program, right? So that's what it was. I think in some of the work we're doing with Under Armour and Curry Brand in Oakland now is, they've focused on middle school sports and increasing the participation there. So without Curry Brand and Under Armour, PCA, and Eat, Learn, Play, and partnering with Oakland Unified School District, that wouldn't have been able to happen. That wouldn't have been able to increase the participation there. So I think middle school sports is a big focus in a lot of cities right now, and that's, we're working on some things in Baltimore to address some of those challenges. Similarly, down in Atlanta, they want to focus on that middle school and high school sports landscape as well.
Sure. That's great. And I also have to imagine one of the additional challenges is okay, once I have this program built and I'm 5 years down the road and now I'm moving to other cities, is all right, the sustainability of it. And is that is it purely corporate partnerships that are going to sustain it, or is there, at some point, is there a bridge to additional dollars that you guys can or build?
I think it's a great question, and I think when we go into it and look at a local market, we're looking at who are the companies that are headquartered there that want to invest in their local community. I think that's a really important part. We look at the local professional sports teams, and are those teams want to be impactful in the community, because those are their future fans, right? If those kids are playing sports at a young age and they're playing for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, they're going to become a fan of that sport, and they're going to hopefully become a fan of that home team. So we talk a lot about with professional sports teams, they're putting logos on jerseys at local boys and girls clubs and YMCA's and their local leagues, because they want that brand affiliation with, hey, we're going out to play sports. Now I have that pro team logo. They want to create that future fan. the important thing that we need to make sure they invest in is we're investing in that experience, right? The most important thing is that child going to have a great experience when they're wearing the logo of your team? Because a bad experience, a bad coach, they might not come back to the sport, and then they might associate your brand with that bad experience that they had. So we often talk about the importance of investing in the experience as well, because if I were to ask you who is the most impactful coach that you've ever had, you immediately have somebody in your mind right now, and hopefully it was a positive coach and it wasn't a negative circumstance. But the reason that they are so impactful isn't necessarily because the wins and losses, the type of uniform you had, if you won championships. It's because of the way they made you feel, the support that they gave to you, and the lessons that you learned. So that's where we need to make sure we're investing. And so a lot of times when we're talking with corporate brands, it's like, what experience do you want to be aligned with? And hopefully you're helping provide that positive experience.
How have you found that? How do corporate brands evaluate how much money they can allocate to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's two different models when you look at corporate brands, and it can be tricky. Um, Sometimes it will come from the marketing department, and so there are some key uh, impact measures that they want to be able to track from that. Or it could be coming from more of a corporate social responsibility fund, or if the corporation has a foundation. So some of our funding from Under Armour comes from the UA Foundation, right? So they have some clear goals. Here's the mission of the foundation. Here are the grants that we're going to be giving out. We have X amount of dollars that we're able to give out, and they have key areas that they want to focus on. Obviously, youth sports is one of them, but they also focus on some different veteran and military types of causes as well. So it's aligning what the brand or that foundation wants to get into. And then I think it depends on who you're talking to, right? Are you talking to that foundation, corporate social responsibility? Because their goals might be different than, hey, this is a marketing play and we want to actually see, impressions, views, conversion rates, whatever it might be. And to be honest, we've been honest with folks, is our audience wants content, they want access to coach training. They don't necessarily want to be sold, a product. So what we've tried to do is, how do we get creative and make these partnerships really genuine? So when we're doing things with Curry brand, they're honoring the Curry Coach of the Year, right? Go through our training, become recognized as a Curry brand Coach of the Year, get access to these types of things at Under Armour, but also you're getting this content, you're getting more positive youth sports experience for your athletes. And so those are the types of things that we're trying to make meaningful partnerships and not transactional partnerships.
No, that's great. That's great. And I assume that they want also, like, from a brand standpoint, that brand affinity, right? I want to build a brand relationship with these families so that when they, just like when you noted, when I think of a coach that made a great impact, I think of a brand that made a great impact on my life. And you're like, oh, Dove, or
Totally. Yeah. And I think that's when Stephen Curry and Under Armour launched the Curry brand, the tagline was changing the game for good. And that's what, when you look at Stephen Curry, the impact that he's had not only on the court but off the court, like, that is part of who he is, and it's genuine. So people, I think, gravitate towards that, and they know that he is actually invested in local communities and communities across the country because of some of the partnerships that his brand and his foundation have focused on.
and I can't underline or reinforce that point strongly or strongly enough, and that is the creating an authentic partnership. Too many times, right? You get a brand is like, well, I got X amount to spend and how many emails and how many, impressions. And at some point it's like, well, you've got to, especially in youth sports and when you're dealing with families and kids, this isn't right. We're not sponsoring the MLB team in the market. We're literally making the community a better place, and we're supporting kids and families, and creating a program that has that comes across as authentic, I think, is because I do believe most brands are saying, hey, yes, I think this is positive. I want to invest in the community and sport, but maybe their activation does not come across as authentic.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I'll talk about one or two of our partnerships in the youth sports space with technology platforms in youth sports. So we have a long-standing great partnership with TeamSnap. which is one of the leaders in youth sports technology platforms for registration, communication, messaging, content. They have been the title sponsor of our National Coach of the Year program for the last 10 plus years. And I think it's a great partnership because it's a genuine partnership. They really know the value of what a great coach can do for a child's experience in sports. So they want to help lift up these great examples of youth and high school sports coaches across the country. They have a great platform. They have access to a lot of parents and coaches where they can say, hey, nominate your coach, right? We're partnered with PCA. Nominate your coach to be recognized as the coach of the year, right? And so I think for them, it is that brand alignment. They want to be seen as an organization that obviously is in a company that's obviously working in this, youth sports world of $40 billion industry, but they also want to show that we are also investing in the experience and making sure that it's a great experience. And that starts with coaches and providing the best coaches. And so they've not only invested in that Coach of the Year program with PCA, but they've also helped fund some of those local access and equity coalitions because they know they want to provide their service to families that might not be able to normally access it, but through PCA's partnerships, they can reach more families as well.
Sports technology and what a big impact it's having on youth sports. In a previous episode, we talked about how we are aggregating youth sports like never before. Right, never before could we reach 10 million families across America who play in their local youth sports leagues and deliver a message from corporate brands. And you've got two great partners, right? In TeamSnap and
Yeah.
GameChanger.
GameChanger.
Which,
Yep.
yeah, which is kudos to yourself to be able to figure out how to manage both, right?
Right.
I
Yeah. Yeah. We
think
joke a lot that we tend to call ourselves Switzerland. We want to be able to work with everybody, but also we joke about that. But I think it goes back to that genuine partnership, and we feel like the PCA has a solution for making youth sports really a positive, accessible, and equitable opportunity for all kids. So if what we don't want to do is put up any barriers to reach people. So if we can reach people through TeamSnap, great. If we can reach people through GameChanger, great. And I think they recognize the value of what that partnership is, and they respect that. And we want to make sure that if we're working with both of them, we're going to have specific things we're going to do with each platform. But they also know. I think we're seeing more and more collaboration between some of those quote unquote competitors in that market, which is good. I think more kids playing youth sports is good for everybody. So I think if people can come together and find solutions to get more kids active and involved, that's a good thing for everybody in the market.
Well, for those of you who are just tuning in, you're listening and watching Sponsorable. Make sure you subscribe and like so that we can continue to have great guests like CEO of Positive Coaching Alliance, Jason Sachs, on. Jason, we haven't really so we spent the first part of the show really talking about the business side, but for our viewers that are maybe not as familiar with Positive Coaching Alliance, maybe give us the elevator pitch on what you guys do.
Yeah, thank you. So our mission is to change the culture of youth sports so that every child, regardless of social or economic circumstance, has access to a positive youth sports experience. We all know that, um, there's we all know that when kids are in a great environment and a positive youth sports experience, there's a lot of great outcomes that come with that will stay with them long after their playing days are over. So great life skills like building resilience, teamwork, growth mindset, those types of things are really important in addition to learning the sport and being active. So we want to make sure that we're providing that positive youth sports experience for all kids. We also know that many times people will say that, sports develops character, which is true, but it's only developing character if it's deliberately done right. And oftentimes, if sports is left to its own devices, it actually can be a breeding ground for a lot of negative things, right? A lot of different forms of abuses, negative experiences. So we think it's sports done right leads to all those great things. So PCA is in the business of helping schools, youth sports organizations, community organizations professional sports leagues and teams, national governing bodies. How can we help them make sure that sports is done right so that kids have that positive youth sports experience? And we do that at the grassroots level through partnerships with schools, youth sports organizations, parks and rec, little leagues, and we come in and do training for organizational leaders, coaches, parents, student athletes, officials, really making sure that everybody's on the same page. We work in communities throughout the country where there may be barriers to access, as we've discussed earlier, and come up with different game plans on how we can remove some of those barriers so more kids have access.
Yeah. So is for our listeners who maybe aren't as well versed on the structure and organizational kind of hierarchy of youth sports. Right? Is it fair to say PCA does not run leagues, does not run clubs, does not run teams, but you are brought in to help train those clubs coaches, or the come in and run a workshop for the parents. And I wasn't as aware that you actually have programming that target or that impacts the athletes themselves.
Yeah, so you nailed it. We're a third party partner to a school or youth sports organization. Like in the simplest terms, you could almost call us a consultant, right? We're going to come in, we're going to help you run these different programs. So yes, workshops for a little league board, we could do a leadership workshop for that board of, hey, let's think about your mission, your vision. How do you want to run things? What's important to this league? What do you want people to think about when they show up? What are the expectations there? What are different tools for communication, message bombardment, to make sure that all of your stakeholders are on the same page with what that league is going to be? Obviously train coaches, parent engagement, and then yes, at the middle school and high school level, we have a student athlete program. So we work with a lot of high schools around the country where we have a student athlete character and leadership development program. So it's a way for athletic directors to implement more programming for their athletes off the field and really focusing on leadership. We have a workshop for student athletes around their personal brand and social media and the positives and potential negative impacts of social media. And we have, talk about positive initiation and different things that teams can do. And so sometimes that might be for all the captains of teams, and they'll come together a couple times throughout the year, and then they can bring things back to their teammates. But we believe in a systems approach to you know, culture change. And that means that everybody has to be on the same page. So we can't just go and talk to coaches, because who's a really important piece of the youth and high school sports ecosystem? The parents. So we need to make sure the parents know their role and that they're aligned with some of the messaging that the coaches have. And we want to separate that, right? Coaches, here's your role. Parents, here's your role. Let the kids and the coaches worry about the winning. As a parent, we want you focusing on that support, not only for your own child, but for the entire team and the game as a whole.
From my perspective, like I'm bought in. I truly believe in what you guys do and what you stand for. But I'm assuming it's not so easy to go out and get these school districts, because I assume you have to go at the school district or at least the higher level, the administrative level of a high school or middle school. What is the pushback that you get from some of these folks?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a lot. We have a great partnership team here at PCA that is out there talking to athletic directors, little league board presidents, about the benefits of partnering with PCA. But yeah, we get pushback sometimes. Everything from budgetary, right? This costs money. When we go and work with organizations, they pay a portion of what it costs for us to put on that programming. Obviously, when we're in underserved communities, we try to fully fund those partnerships. But so I think budget can be a constraint. I think it's well worth the investment. And I think if you partner with PCA, then you're most likely going to have more kids coming back because there was a great experience. So that's going to help your registration, revenue coming in the next year. I think sometimes just from a timing and a bandwidth of an athletic director, right? An athletic director has a lot to worry about and has a lot on their plate. And in many schools, there's just one athletic director for all these sports, and they don't have any other administrative support. So I think sometimes they someone on the surface might think that, oh, this is going to be a big undertaking trying to bring in this PCA partnership. But we want to try to make it as easy as possible for them to do that. I think the other thing is we are asking a lot of our coaches right now when it comes to background check, first aid training, concussion training. Like sometimes athletic directors or little league boards or whatever it might be say, like, we just don't have time for this, or how are we going to implement all of this? So that's where we're trying to, one of the things we've really been focused on is how can we partner with some of these technology platforms so it makes it easier for coaches to do everything that they have to do up front in one spot, and they're not going to 5 different places to try to check all the boxes that they need to do. So I think sometimes it might feel like a daunting undertaking for leagues or an athletic director to implement some of this. But our hope is that if you implement this, this is going to on the back end make things a lot more easier. So, hey, instead of running that first practice, have a coach workshop. It's probably going to help the coach more throughout the entire season versus that one extra practice that they're trying to get in.
Do you have challenges with bringing in certain, partners? And I'll use an example. Like I used to do a lot of work for the U.S. Army, and there would be school districts that were, would push back a little bit about having Army recruiters in the, in the building. But I gotta believe that you go to any U.S. Army local recruiting command, and they would love to underwrite your coach's workshop or your coach, especially the coach and the parent workshop at the high school level, because that's exactly who they're trying to get in front of.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great question. I think um, we have I think whenever there's an inquiry that comes into PCA, we not only look at who that brand is or who that funder might be, and making sure that do we think it's a good fit? Do we think it's a great fit for the audience that we want? It might say that you know they might think, yes, we are the right fit for your audience, but I think it has to be in line with our brand. So there have been different partnerships where, whether it be in food and beverage or, other types of different, silos throughout different consumer retail brands, we were like, you know what, this might not be a good fit for us, right? And that's not necessarily the brand alignment, not necessarily anything, derogatory about the specific brand, but more so next to the PCA brand, do we feel like that's the right fit? So we go through that process when we get different inquiries, and I think it's interesting, Garrett. Like I've been with PCA for 20 years. We have an inquiry that came in 10 or 15 years ago might look a lot different than what's coming in now, and which to our we like to celebrate the fact that the some of the partnerships that we've talked about earlier, like those are some of the best brands in sports, and we're really excited that we are partnered with them, and we want to make sure that we keep that level of partnerships across the organization, because 20 years ago, we would have loved the opportunity to even have a conversation with ESPN, but like we weren't built for that yet. But because we've been able to grow, that's been so 20 years ago, a different type of partnership might have made more sense. But now we feel really comfortable about who we are, who we want to be aligned with. And that might mean some brands we might not partner with. And I think that's okay.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you hit it on the head. It's you look at your portfolio of brands, and it truly is, premium brands, and there's power like Dove next to Gatorade, next to TeamSnap, and next to Under Armour. Like those are just great brands, and they're the best part about it is they're all unifying together to support community sports families across America.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like, as I said, it's going to take everybody, right? Everybody can play a part in this, and the more and more people that we, you know, get on board and aligned and going in the right direction, I think we can all play our specific role. Like our partnership with Dove, we work not only with Dove on the women's side and their body confidence sport initiative. We also work with Dove Men Plus Care as well. And so we have now we can it's like great. Now we can reach every audience that we want to through some of the Dove platform and the Unilever platform. So it's super exciting that brands are recognizing not only PCA, but I think more importantly, the power of youth sports and youth sports as a platform.
And I would say there's not too many national organizations that can deliver the scholastic market. And that's right in person, like, and you can do it on a number of levels, which I think is is very interesting. Like you can have a target approach to key cities. You can have a target approach just to the high school demo or the middle school demo. I'm not sure if Kellogg's is still doing it, but I remember, years ago they were running their middle school sports, which was a great kind of PR media campaign, but there wasn't, actually speaking with a lot of the Kellogg's folks, didn't seem like there was much substance to it. Like, okay, what's the plan? How are we going to save middle school sports? And it's not an advertisement that's going to do it.
And I think, no, you nailed it right there. I think that's what makes PCA so attractive to some of these brands. It's like, all right, we want to save middle school sports. How can we do that? Okay, let's go to communities where they might not have middle school sports or they're struggling. How can PCA help that? Okay, we want to improve the experience of middle school sports. Okay, let's provide coach training. Let's provide access and opportunity for student athletes to get some of our curriculum. Let's make sure that the organizational leadership has support on how to run the league and how to create a welcoming environment. So our work is very tangible, and I think that's what we continue to stress not only to our staff but our partners is let's keep doing the work, right? There's a lot of narratives out there about the good and bad of youth sports right now. And yes, like it is ever changing and it's going to continue to change and it's not going to go back to the way that we once had it. But how does PCA continue to be that force that is doing the work at the grassroots level and the national level?
Well, Jason, for those who are listening who want to get in touch with you or want to learn more about Positive Coaching Alliance, what's the best way for them to follow all the great work you're doing?
Yeah, thank you. Our website is positivecoach.org. And on that website, you can not only find out, more about the work we're doing, we have a resources page. So if you're a coach, a parent, organizational leader, there's lots of different resources that you can tap into. And then follow us on social media at Positive Coach US. And we pump out a lot of content for those in youth sports. So hopefully it's quick hitting tips that will make your next trip to the youth sports field a better one for you and your child.
Sounds great. Well, Jason, it's great to have you on. Certainly look forward to following all the great work Positive Coaching Alliance is doing and continues to do. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me, Garrett.